Jagged, icy mountains rise up in the snowy and windy landscape. Ketil watches as the ice dragon and the polar bear prepare for battle. A dark monster with purple eyes and tentacles looms menacingly over the murky water. Ketil reflects on the cruelty and danger of the imperial court. Dark purple flashes accompany the words that these are not monsters at all. Ketil charges at the enemy, delivering a powerful blow into the snowstorm. A powerful explosion of light blinds the space, tearing apart the darkness and creating chaos. A man with white hair suddenly grabs someone by the shoulder in a tense situation. He, with a white beard, screams from the unexpected attack, and it gets dark around him. Ketil steps carefully through the snow, preparing for an unexpected encounter. Ketil fights in the darkness, fending off swift sword attacks. Ketil watches as a man in a skin fights a huge scorpion in the snow. Ketil irritably thinks about the need to stay with these people, and the girl is surprised. The character is clutching a cup from which a strange green liquid is dripping. Ketil and his companions react with caution to a sudden noise in the snowstorm. Ketil stands surrounded by a mystical aura, addressing the lying man. Ketil and his companion enthusiastically express their admiration for the interlocutor's intelligence. The character reacts in horror to a sudden loud sound or scream. A man reacts in panic and horror to a sudden noise and scream. Ketil is suddenly awakened by a scream and a loud bang in the darkness. Ketil breathes heavily, feeling the strong wind and the tension of the moment. Ketil tries to wake up Greta, who is lying in the snow, screaming and waving her arms. Ketil stands, looking thoughtfully at the sky, surrounded by light and shadows. Ketil reflects on her desire to enter a world of fantasy, magic, and dreams. Ketil climbs to the top of the mountain, overcoming difficulties and reaching the sunset. Ketil stands on a rock, looking out over the moonlit sea in the silence of the night. Ketil reflects on the blurriness of reality and night prayer. In the radiance of space, the thought resounds that the prayer has been answered. A horse-drawn cargo cart moves slowly along a snowy road, accompanied by guards. Ketil and his companion fight the cold wind, trying to warm up. Ketil and his companion discuss the risk of crossing the snowy wasteland, despite their concerns. The man with blue eyes sternly orders silence, looking tensely ahead. He, with dark hair and fur clothing, explains the unexpectedly bad circumstances. An elderly man in a tuxedo is shivering from the cold and reacting loudly to the noise. An elderly man with a mustache and gloves thoughtfully raises his hand to his face. An elderly man with a mustache asks a woman with blue hair with concern. Milena from the Akai house smiles and assures that she is fine. A hooded man is angry at being treated roughly, while an old man watches from the window. A woman with blue hair explains the importance of guides through the snowy wasteland. A girl with blue hair looks thoughtfully out the window at the frost. Two men in raincoats shield themselves from the strong wind and screams in a snowstorm. An old man warns a woman about the dangers lurking in the wasteland. A woman with long blue hair sits thoughtfully by the window, thinking about monsters. Ketil watches a mage summon light in the darkness of the mountains. Ketil walks alone through the deserted land after the emperor's return. Ketil looks older and ponders the real danger lurking behind the monsters. Ketil stands surrounded by mystical light, preparing to meet the barbarians. Ketil stands in the dark storm, remembering the hellish land from which no one ever returned alive. An elderly man in a suit tries to convince a woman that this is just a legend. A woman with long blonde hair doubts the truth of the emperor's words. An elderly man in a suit talks with a smile about the barbarian in the room. The blue-haired woman agrees thoughtfully, acknowledging that someone is right. Ketil and his companion stopped when they heard a strange noise in the snowstorm. Ketil and his companion try to make out something in the thick snowfall and wind. A man with an intense look prepares to deliver important news. A group of warriors tensely discuss news of a small but alarming threat. Ketil watches a mysterious figure appear in the snowstorm. Ketil and his companions react with caution to the approaching threat in the darkness of the night. A man with short blonde hair grips the hilt of his sword sharply, reacting warily to the noise. Ketil stands in the snowstorm, trying to figure out who is in front of him. Ketil stands in the darkness, his hair blowing in the wind, creating a tense atmosphere. Ketil clutches the claw amulet, feeling tension and anxiety. Ketil stands in the snowstorm, his gaze focused and determined. Several warriors in furs react warily to the approaching blizzard and the sounds around them. Ketil, with a tense look and glowing eyes, prepares for an unexpected threat. Ketil decides not to fight the barbarians anymore and goes for a walk, where he meets strangers in the wasteland. Ketil smiles as she enjoys her unexpected luck in the snowstorm. A welcoming message appears in the cold light, creating an atmosphere of anticipation. Ketil listens attentively to the question, standing next to the snow-covered cart. 3 mercenaries discuss protecting a merchant in a winter setting. Ketil thoughtfully warns of his return, doubting obedience. Ketil watches the carriage thoughtfully when a sudden cry attracts attention. A man with short blonde hair reacts warily to a sudden noise in the crowd. Ketil smiles and expresses regret that he was not hired along with the others. 2 men in winter clothes react warily to a sudden noise in a snowstorm. Ketil confidently offers to become a guide through the snowy wasteland, smiling into the blizzard. A man with short blonde hair doubts the legendary barbarian's betrayal. Ketil smiles confidently despite the harsh weather conditions around her. 2 men in winter clothes react warily to a sudden sound in a snowstorm. A man with gray eyes watches a determined blonde man closely in the cold weather. Ketil writes something with concentration on the foggy glass on a cold day. Ketil listens to the strange sound, trying to understand what is happening. The woman with blue hair reacts with surprise to the words of the man with gray hair. A man with short blonde hair tensely announces a request to hire a guide. A woman with blue hair asks thoughtfully about the possible consequences of fighting someone. Ketil stands in the cold snowstorm, radiating strength and determination. A woman with long blonde hair firmly expresses her consent. A man with short blonde hair agrees, standing in the wind and snow. Ketil steps carefully through the deep snow, leaving footprints. Ketil and the other men stand on the snowy plain, receiving permission. Ketil reacts with a slight smile to the sudden sound next to him. Ketil with the purple eye smiles, anticipating good news. 2 men in winter clothes watch the action warily in a snowstorm. Ketil stands tensely in front of the other man, preparing for an unexpected confrontation. Ketil confidently says that there is no need to be afraid, because the enemy is just mercenaries. A man with a stern look warns of possible bad intentions. Ketil looks forward with a slight smile, displaying calm and confidence. Ketil watches the man in warm clothes against the snowy backdrop with a slight smile. A subordinate hesitantly asks his boss for permission to talk to the customer. The hooded man resolutely discusses the need to stop the enemy no matter what. Ketil stands with his back to the world, surrounded by mystical purple smoke, calling for honesty. Ketil calmly urges the man to calm down, despite his fear. The woman turns away abruptly, hearing an unexpected question at the door. A man reacts sharply in shock to a sudden loud sound. He, with long blonde hair, nervously agrees to let the guest in. Ketil stands in a snowstorm with a mysterious smile and glowing eyes. Ketil, with his eyes closed, tries to calm those around him with his calm voice. Ketil calmly maintains his innocence despite the aggressive accusations. The blue-haired woman is amazed by the presence of the legendary barbarian. Ketil and another man in warm clothes exchange words in a cozy room. Ketil notices that the room is quite warm, despite the snowy wasteland. Ketil listens attentively to the surprised girl, trying to understand the essence of magic. Ketil resolutely promises to protect his interlocutor, despite the danger of the place. The woman with blue hair suddenly makes a condition, causing surprise in the man with a mustache. Ketil listens attentively to the woman with long blue hair as they discuss the condition. Ketil speaks strongly about the need to gain knowledge about the outside world. Ketil demands to be told the whole truth, putting forward his own conditions. A woman with blue hair speaks thoughtfully about the world beyond the snowy wasteland. Ketil agrees with his interlocutor with a slight smile, confident in his opinion. Ketil thoughtfully realizes that they have no option but to refuse the offer. The blue-haired woman thoughtfully acknowledges her understanding of the situation. Ketil watches with a grin as the frightened man screams in surprise. Milena timidly introduces herself, answering the question about her name. Ketil introduces herself and expresses her excitement about the upcoming collaboration. Ketil dreamed of living in a fantasy world and suddenly woke up in the body of a barbarian. Ketil stands in the rain, trying to comprehend what happened. Ketil fights a huge bear and monsters in a snowstorm to survive. Ketil reflects on time and his quest to save people from the terrible snowstorms. Ketil suddenly punches, creating a powerful explosion of energy. Ketil stands watching the holographic message about the failed task. Ketil and his heavily armored companions move slowly through the snowy field in a gloomy atmosphere. Ketil thoughtfully realizes something important. A drop of sweat runs down his face. Ketil stands on a cliff, admiring the world filled with snow fields and light. Ketil realizes the need to act as he battles a massive dragon in a snowstorm. Ketil attacks the enemy with determination, completing the task and preparing for the next one. Ketil explains to the girl the importance of information about a world from which there is no escape. Ketil watches as the knight screams in panic about the people grabbing weapons. Ketil reflects on the rare meeting with someone he can talk to. Ketil, with his eyes closed, reacts to a sudden sound that causes anxiety. The blue-haired girl is surprised, and the Ketil notices a change in the sounds. A woman with blue hair talks thoughtfully about war and the kingdom. Ketil watches a fierce battle where many warriors fight under the red sky. Ketil is amazed and tries to understand the power that these people possess. The blue-haired woman tells the Ketil about mysticism and her constant presence here. A woman explains the existence of a force called mysticism despite her ignorance. Ketil studies magical powers available only to a select few. A man with long blonde hair is studying the second-class mystical power intently. Ketil is focused on studying the mystical power that manifests itself in the form of mana or aura. Ketil reflects on the forbidden level where ranks lose meaning. A woman with blue hair reflects thoughtfully on strength and ability. The woman with blue hair suddenly interrupted the man with gray eyes. Ketil reflects thoughtfully on the time spent in torment and attempts to survive. Ketil stands on a rock and looks at the portal to a fantasy world. Ketil looks down thoughtfully, contemplating the desire to leave the snowfields. Ketil denies something with a slight smile, lost in his thoughts. Ketil looks into the mirror, determined to complete his task. The carriage moves slowly along the snowy road, accompanied by two horsemen. Ketil calmly explains that his identity was obvious from his interlocutor's reaction. A woman with blue hair thoughtfully talks about the existence of legends. Ketil reacts with surprise to the mention of legends concerning him. The blue-haired girl reacts with surprise to the unexpected news. Ketil smiles as he discusses the unexpected turn of events with the woman, while the armored man laughs behind them. Ketil listens with a slight smile and tries to understand what is said. Ketil carefully questions the girl about the reasons for passing through the snowy wasteland. The woman with blue hair tries to start a conversation, clearly nervous. Ketil thoughtfully admits to an urgent need for money. A man in rich clothes talks about family debts and trade. Ketil thoughtfully considers a way to pay off his debts, pressing his hand to his chin. The blue-haired woman worriedly accuses him of betraying the kingdom. During a discussion of military resources, Ketil listens attentively to a report on the weapons shortage. Ketil reflects on the high cost and the worth of the risk involved in crossing snowfields. Ketil, with a serious expression, discusses the only way to the kingdom. A woman with blue hair and a surprised expression confirms the correctness of what was said. Ketil tries to understand who is in front of him with doubt and anxiety. The blue-haired woman is shocked by the sudden question about the barbarian. An elderly man with a mustache reacts in horror to the sudden sound of a wheel. Ketil stood up abruptly, reacting to the scream. Tension reigned in the room. Ketil is surprised to notice an unexpected, uninvited guest in the room. Ketil and his companions encounter a sinister creature emitting a bright red light. The characters react in shock to the sudden scream that breaks the silence. Keatle ponders thoughtfully about the name of the mysterious creature mentioned in the conversation. The blue-haired woman becomes alarmed as she discusses the description of the monster in the notes. Keatle listens attentively to the story of the survivors and the monsters encountered in the white snowy wasteland. A woman with blue hair and a serious expression asks the Keatle about her knowledge. Keatle smiles as she contemplates the taste of the snack, enjoying the moment. A woman with blue hair in a fur cape is surprised and asks about food. Keatle offers to catch something for the blue-haired girl, who refuses. A blue-haired woman watches in horror as a flash of magic and a scream erupts. Keatle reacts to the frightened girl's scream with a serious expression. Keatle calmly reminds about the signed contract, expressing confidence. Keatle confidently states that he will protect lives, but will not interfere without real danger. The woman with blue hair reacts with surprise to what is said next to her. Keatle reflects with a slight smile on the guy's abilities and his own level. Keatle and the other characters watch in horror as the enraged monster lets out a piercing scream. Two men tensely prepare to defend themselves, shouting commands at each other. Keatle falls to the ground with force. A scream and the sound of footsteps are heard. Keatle fights fiercely against the shadow, repelling powerful attacks. The man with long hair in a fur coat suddenly recoiled, screaming in fear. A sudden impact and a surprised reaction to an unknown object breaks the silence. Keatle, with his sword, prepares to attack a huge, monstrous monster with an open mouth. The man with green eyes tensely orders everyone to act in a coordinated manner against the black slimes. He reacts decisively to the sudden event in winter clothes. Keatle attacks swiftly, delivering a powerful blow in the middle of the fight. Keatle fights fiercely against a demonic creature emitting purple light. A dark shadow with purple eyes lets out a piercing scream, surrounded by energy. The hand tightly grips a wooden staff, surrounded by shimmering green sparks. Keatle fights a huge flying creature that makes loud noises. A warrior in a cloak with a sword calls for not giving up and continuing the attack in a snowstorm. Keatle deflects a powerful blow with a glowing sword, surrounded by a storm and energy. A man with short blonde hair attacks furiously, surrounded by dark energy. Keatle raises a glowing sword, which he thrusts into the ground with force, causing an explosion of energy. The red crystal suddenly breaks into pieces with a loud sound. A mysterious purple creature with a red light appears in the snowy forest. Keatle and his companions react to the sudden noise, preparing for an unexpected threat. Keatle and his companions encountered a huge, evil creature in a snowy area. Keatle attacks swiftly, cutting through the air and attacking the wolf. Keatle tensely repels the sudden attack of dark energy. Keatle and his companions react with caution to a sudden noise in the snowy forest. The man with blue eyes warns them not to let their guard down. They are not halfway there yet. Keatle thoughtfully discusses the power of the barbarian and the reality of monsters in the Emperor's world. Keatle listens thoughtfully to the conversation about the mysterious man in the white snowy wasteland. A man with blue eyes thoughtfully offers to test the other's abilities. The woman with blue hair and a surprised expression thought about what she had heard. Keatle looks forward thoughtfully, silently assessing the situation. A man in a raincoat calmly addresses a woman despite the snowstorm. The heroes discuss the risks of undertaking a dangerous mission, emphasizing the importance of testing. A woman in a white cloak stands in front of a hooded man, discussing an important matter. A woman with blue hair expresses anxiety while thinking about something important. Two characters are having a serious conversation against the backdrop of a snowstorm. The brown-haired character expresses doubt and concern about the other's fighting skills. A woman with blue hair looks thoughtfully at a man in dark clothes. Keatle watches a man in a red scarf trying to keep warm. A character in winter clothing takes a determined step through the snow, expressing doubt about the possibility of something. Keatle stands in the cold, announcing the arrival of another guest. Keatle is alarmed by the approach of dangerous mortal creatures to the earth. Keatle and his companion react sharply to a sudden cry in the darkness. It depicts a terrible monster with a wide-open mouth and a long tongue, making ominous sounds. The dark figure calls for screaming and writhing to enhance the experience. A woman with blue hair screams in sudden pain or fear in the glow. Ketil attacks furiously, reacting to the sudden scream and flashes of light. Ketil, with a serious expression on his face, drives away the intruder, calling him a snake. The dark dragon threatens and warns of the consequences of violating the boundaries of its territory. Ketil resolutely refuses to interfere, ignoring threats and ridicule. Ketil fights furiously, surrounded by a whirlwind of energy and the sounds of battle. Ketil stands in front of a huge snake, which hisses furiously and threatens him. Ketil suddenly delivers a powerful blow, warning of the consequences. Ketil quickly fights back from the powerful attack, sending snow flying around him. Ketil fights a huge snake-like creature surrounded by a vortex of water. A woman with blue hair covers her face in reaction to a sudden scream. Ketil watches the sudden noise in the thick fog, bracing himself for the unexpected. Ketil notices the noise and prepares to deal with what is happening without wasting any time. A powerful kick shatters the surface with a bright purple glow. Ketil focuses on releasing a powerful energy blast, damaging enemies. Ketil strikes swiftly, his eyes focused on the target. Ketil is surrounded by a blinding explosion of energy that suddenly erupts in front of him. Ketil listens warily to the conversations in the room, sensing the tension in the air. A man in a suit is shivering from the cold and trying to warm himself up by clenching his fist to his mouth. Ketil looks forward thoughtfully, lost in his thoughts. Ketil is interested in talking to the surprised girl with blue hair. Ketil doubts that the interlocutor is simply a family agent, judging by his clothing and manner of speech. The blue-haired character reacts with confusion to the unexpected event. A girl with blue hair and a serious expression talks about her origins. A woman with a child recalls political intrigue and the loss of power. Ketil clenches his fists as he thinks about the formal family relationship with his mother. The woman with blue hair sits thoughtfully by the window, reflecting on her words. Ketil, with a serious expression, confirms the importance of talking about life and death. The blue-haired woman makes a strong statement about the need to lead by example. Ketil, with a slight smile, acknowledges the intelligence and understands the situation. The blue-haired woman listens thoughtfully, receiving a reproach for greed and ambition. The woman with blue hair listens intently to what is happening around her. Ketil was suddenly distracted by the unexpected noise, looking around warily. A girl with blue hair reacts with surprise to a sudden sound or scream. Two men in winter clothes look up in surprise, sensing the arrival. A steppe landscape in bright sunlight, creating a feeling of calm and space. Ketil stands with two people, discussing plans for the return journey and arms trade. Ketil listens attentively to his interlocutor, feeling the cold and tension around him. The girl with blue hair and a serious expression recalls the words about her ambition. A man with blue hair listens to praise from an older man in a suit. Ketil explains that the interlocutor's family has lost influence and resources, but there is a chance to change the situation. A woman with blue hair asks thoughtfully about trust and power in the family. Ketil looks thoughtfully into the distance, immersed in his thoughts. The woman with blue hair thoughtfully confirms the correctness of what was said. Ketil reflects on the risks and opportunities associated with her family's future. A woman with blue hair listens thoughtfully to a man in a fur coat. The blue-haired woman speaks thoughtfully of strength and the possibility of leaving the wasteland. Ketil, with a serious expression on his face, offers to join him. Ketil refuses, explaining that he has unfinished business. The woman hands the Ketil an ornament, offering it to him to take in his hands. The woman with blue hair offers to show the token to search for the Akashic house. Ketil accepts the gift with a smile, enjoying the moment in the cold. Ketil and two men discuss their hopes for a future meeting in the winter forest. Ketil walks along a forest path, surrounded by glowing particles. 5 years later, the Ketil looks out over a white snowy wasteland and a clear sky. Ketil receives a notification about the completion of the 784th quest and the reward. Ketil looks up, feeling the approach to a long-dreamed-of fantasy world. Ketil enjoys the fresh air while watching a white squirrel on a branch. Ketil lies in the forest, enjoying the silence and beauty of nature around her. Ketil looks ahead with a slight smile, enjoying the fresh air. Ketil stands in the rain, looking at the mysterious snowy mountain. Ketil reflects on a fantasy world full of wonders and the unknown. Ketil reflects on magic, fencing, dragons and elves, enjoying the world of fantasy. A man reflects on the harsh conditions of the snowy wasteland and his will to live. Ketil watches the bright lights in the distance, expressing bewilderment. Ketil notices a group of people ahead, illuminated by the sunlight. Ketil looks up at the sky with confidence, thinking about the village nearby. Ketil thoughtfully recalls the conversations about the man from the village, looking at the snow. Ketil, hearing the noise, looks around warily in search of the source of the sound. An old man with a long beard and pointed ears calls the elven inhabitants to action. A group of people with happy faces walk through a sunny meadow surrounded by flowers. The crowd reacts with fear to the scream, and the Ketil watches from a tree. The old elf reacts with caution to the sudden appearance of another elf. The young elf doubts the safety of the place. The old man assures him otherwise. Ketil and the girl watch what is happening cautiously, not trusting the people around them. An elderly elf with a staff discusses with a young man the danger of the appearance of monsters. An elderly elf discusses the importance of barriers and safety in the forest. Scrolls with magical symbols confirm the barrier's protection from outsiders. The woman assures them that their queen is with them, and the old man expresses his trust in her. Ketil noticed a strange sound and looked around the forest warily. Ketil walks tiredly through the forest, thinking about the long journey ahead. Ketil reacts with caution to an unexpected noise in the forest. A little girl covers her ears in fear, reacting to a loud sound. Ketil listens thoughtfully as the woman explains the importance of the flower in their world. The little elf is frightened to realize that he is lost and does not know where he is. The little elf looks up in surprise, reacting to the sudden sound. A woman reacts in horror to a sudden loud sound in the dark. A little girl looks fearfully at a huge stranger in the darkness of the forest. The little elf is shocked by the sudden loud sound next to him. A little girl in a green dress faints from unexpected fright. The bright sky with flying birds and green tree crowns create a calm atmosphere. Ketil watches in surprise as the girl suddenly freezes in his arms. Ketil reacts warily to the sudden sound, narrowing his eyes. A small elf, unconscious and foaming at the mouth, is causing alarm among those around him. Ketil enjoys the light and joy of being surrounded by happy people and nature. Ketil admits her excitement with a slight smile. Ketil gently holds a sleeping baby elf against a green backdrop. Ketil holds the girl in her arms in confusion, trying to understand what is happening. Two men are shocked by the sudden appearance of a Ketil behind a barrier in the forest. The woman screams in panic about her daughter, not believing what is happening. The old man, in a rage, demands an explanation about the queen and the barrier. Ketil holds the child and tries to convince those around him that he is not an enemy. An old man with a white beard warns of the consequences of revealing their secret, while a group of warriors warily monitor their surroundings. Ketil suddenly wakes up in a state of shock and confusion. Ketil realizes that he has been mistaken for a kidnapper and decides to immediately explain himself. The little elf trembles and cries, sitting in the arms of a large creature. The girl with golden hair cries, expressing strong emotions. A little girl in a green dress reacts with surprise to a sudden sound. Ketil suddenly appears in the darkness, startling a little girl who looks at him in fear. A man with gray eyes falls down in fear after a woman screams in the forest. Ketil is shocked by her unexpected appearance and inner feeling. Ketil resolutely promises to return the child, causing surprise among the elves. Ketil and the old man prepare for battle. The old man shouts, raising his sword. Ketil concentrates on directing a powerful stream of fire downwards, causing a bright glow. Ketil ponders thoughtfully about the wild elves and the legends about them. A woman in a light dress stands among forest animals, thinking about the cruel elves. The wolf fights fiercely with the deer, demonstrating the natural cruelty of nature. Ketil watches as the glowing projectiles fall rapidly from the sky. Ketil watches the arrows fall rapidly, trying to understand the situation. Ketil summons magical energy, causing a powerful explosion of light and power. Ketil watches as a powerful explosion destroys the barrier and strikes the opponents. Ketil and the others fall from the sky, surrounded by destruction and explosions. Ketil creates a powerful energy blast, damaging the ground around him. Ketil stands in the pit, trying to convince the stranger that he is not an enemy. Ketil thoughtfully realizes that he had overdone it a bit when he mentioned elves. Ketil dodged the fast-moving fireball that caused panic around him. The explosion destroys the surrounding area, causing chaos and panic. The old man and the young elf look in surprise at the suddenly erupting fireball. A light breeze plays with the hair of a girl standing on a rock under the bright sun. An elf with a serious expression addresses someone with respect. A woman with a bow carefully examines the surroundings, trying to understand the situation. An old man with a staff in panic warns of a human attack. The woman with long blonde hair realizes the danger of this place. Ketil, standing in a cloud of dust, demands to wait, preparing for action. The elderly man screams in horror, surprised that Her Majesty remains unharmed. A woman with a bow stands confidently on a dais, addressing someone below. The woman with blue eyes expresses disgust towards people while thinking about this. The woman with pointed ears is presented as the queen of the indigo-dyed CLA list. A female archer concentrates on drawing her bowstring, preparing to shoot. Ketil thoughtfully tries to understand why he is being ignored and misunderstood. Ketil stands before a huge creature with a red glowing eye, pondering the harsh rules. Ketil releases an arrow from his decorated bow with concentration, surrounded by magical energy. Ketil jumps sharply into the water, creating a powerful splash and spray. Ketil stands before a huge glowing dragon radiating powerful energy. Ketil reacts sharply to the sudden blow, focusing his gaze. Ketil suddenly fights off the powerful glowing attack, falling to the ground. Ketil receives a powerful energy blast that blinds and knocks him down. Ketil reflects a powerful attack, causing surprise in the observer. Ketil hears a loud explosion and a scream, reacting to the sudden danger. Ketil sits on the ground surrounded by destruction and falling rocks. Ketil thoughtfully tries to figure out whether he should restrain himself more. A woman with pointy ears and blonde hair reacts in surprise to a sudden sound. A woman with long blonde hair discusses the dragon's power and the possible consequences of a collision. A character with long blonde hair orders everyone to leave this place immediately. The crowd, panicked and frightened by the sudden noise, shouts and orders to run immediately. A man in a simple suit runs anxiously, trying to escape from his pursuer. The elf decisively acknowledges the man's strength, but warns of the impossibility of achieving the goal. Ketil tries to explain with a tired look, feeling that something has gone wrong. The antlered elf calls upon the power of pure flame, summoning a primordial essence. A woman with blue eyes and a decoration on her forehead looks forward with concentration. A man with gray eyes and bangs between his eyes directs a powerful fireball into the sky. The fiery creature rises violently in a whirlwind of flame and light. Ketil recalls the strange creatures of the tundra with surprise and admiration. Dark creatures with sinister purple eyes and sharp teeth inspire terror. Ketil watches a mighty bull with horns of blazing fire in front of him. Ketil, with shining eyes and a blush on her face, admires the miracle she has seen. A woman with a moon earring commands that the enemy in front of her be destroyed. The flaming bull expresses frustration with the futility of contracts and problems. An elf with a moon earring reacts warily to an unexpected event. The fire spirit demonstrates its power, and the Ketil and its companions watch with respect. An elf with a long braid and green clothes orders the Pigo contract to be fulfilled. Ketil is stunned and tries to comprehend the meaning of the contract related to the murder of a worthy person. Ketil stands in front of the dark silhouette in the ominous atmosphere with a frightening smile. The fire bull bursts out of the blazing vortex with fury, surrounded by energy. Ketil is surprised to realize that he has found himself in a fantasy world and sees a summoned beast. Ketil reports the invasion of their lands with alarm and concentration. Ketil is surprised and confused after the threat emanating from the fiery silhouette. The fiery creature fights furiously, surrounded by blazing tongues of flame. The fiery bull rushes forward, leaving a flaming trail behind it. Ketil suddenly felt a strong heartbeat and became alert. The explosion shatters the ground, sending flames and rocks into the air. The woman takes cover from a strong blow, trying to defend herself with her hands. The elf reacts with surprise and caution to the sudden noise nearby. Ketil shatters the earth with a powerful blow, summoning a fire dragon. Ketil, in his bestial form with purple eyes, prepares for a deadly attack. An elf with blue eyes and long blonde hair reacts with fear to a sudden sound. Ketil attacks swiftly, destroying the surrounding area with a powerful explosion. A bright burst of light suddenly illuminated the scene, causing tension and anxiety. A powerful explosion destroys the forest, leaving a trail of fire behind it. A huge explosion engulfs the planet, causing chaos and destruction. A huge explosion shakes the earth, causing chaos and destruction all around. Ketil furiously attacks the woman, who screams in pain and fear. Ketil reacts to the sudden sound with a slight expression of surprise. The character is on his knees, confused, trying to understand what is happening around him. Ketil stands on a ruined land, surrounded by clouds of dust and wind. Ketil stands amidst the dust and wind, watching the woman with the bow sitting on the ground. A woman with long blonde hair and jewelry asks for help. A wounded woman with long blonde hair begs for mercy from the advancing enemy. Ketil confidently declares that he is not the elf's enemy, despite the tension. A woman with long red hair reacts sharply to a sudden sound or event. The elf in the green dress is stunned by the destruction around her. Ketil is surprised to realize that the interlocutor was not their enemy. The elf apologizes for jumping to conclusions, looking down and squeezing her hand. Ketil listens with surprise to the accusations against the child of their clan, and the elf feels remorse. Ketil smiles, explaining that she understands the situation and is a little sad about what was left unsaid. The elf with the bow expresses doubt about the Ketil's intentions. Ketil is surprised to see an elf for the first time in the snowy wasteland, where they are usually not found. A woman with blue eyes and a forehead decoration is surprised by the mention of a snowy wasteland. Ketil, dressed in furs, explains that he is called an ash barbarian from the wasteland. The elf is shocked to realize that people were able to survive in a dangerous place. The green-clad elf speaks thoughtfully of the possible appearance of others from the wasteland. Ketil notices a strange creature with sharp teeth that arouses suspicion. Ketil reflects on the rare exception, having managed to parachute them in the form of tasks. An elf with long blonde hair worries and checks the status of the summoning. Ketil explains with a slight smile that spirits are creatures of nature and there is no need to worry. A woman in a light dress carefully lifts her skirt, listening to the sound. An elf with long red hair resolutely promises to help in a difficult situation. Ketil speaks the words thoughtfully, trying to understand the essence of the spirit. Ketil is thoughtfully interested in the possibility of making contracts with spirits other than elves. A woman with long blonde hair expresses doubt about the feasibility of the task. The elf thoughtfully discusses the possibility of making contracts with nature. A woman with an earring in her ear remains silent, expressing confusion or indecision. An elf with a bow explains the terms of a contract with a spirit. The elf tells about the sacred land of the elves and their god who lives there. Ketil smiles and wonders if he will be allowed into the sacred land of the elves. A woman confidently explains to a man how to get to the right place. The elf casts fire spells to protect the elves' sacred land. Ketil watches the menacing man with the axe, realizing the danger of this place. A hand with a bracelet releases a bright fiery crystal against the sky. Ketil receives a mysterious object from the woman and examines it carefully. A mysterious silhouette with horns and a glowing ball threatens to test the Ketel. An elf with a bow and quiver wishes good luck to a man with gray hair. An elf with long red hair introduces herself as the queen of the Autumn Leaf clan. Ketel smiles confidently, demonstrating his strength and charisma. Ketel breaks the stones on the ground with a powerful kick. Ketel forcefully reflects the powerful attack, causing destruction around him. A man with gray hair and a mask attacks rapidly, destroying the ground around him. A sudden loud cry was heard in the forest, breaking the silence of the night. Ketel rides his dragon swiftly over the dense forest. Ketel reacts with fear to loud sounds, looking around anxiously. The guards immediately raise the alarm, ordering the bell to be rung. Ketel watches as a powerful column of smoke and light rises into the sky from the forest. Ketel steps carefully across the fog-covered ground, creating rustling sounds. Ketel emerges from the thick smoke, revealing his muscular figure and determined gaze. The knights in armor are suddenly frightened and stunned by the unexpected event. Ketel smiles and greets the meeting as 3 red warriors approach him. 2 knights in armor are surprised by a loud noise, trying to figure out its source. Ketel is surprised, trying to understand the meaning of his ash-gray hair. Ketel stands in the icy desert, contemplating the impossibility of something and mentioning the ash barbarian. Ketel steps carefully through the grass, listening to the strange sounds around him. 3 knights in armor order to stop and threaten to protect. Ketel convinces his interlocutor that he is not an enemy and asks him to calm down. The warrior in the helmet warily asks what they want from them. The gloved character moves his hand sharply in response to a sudden sound. Ketel prepares for battle with confidence, his hand moving forward with concentration. An armored knight reacts with caution to an unexpected sound in the forest. The characters are surprised by an unexpected knock on the stone wall of the castle. Ketel makes a decisive request to visit a foreign territory. 2 knights in armor react with surprise to an unexpected event. Ketel listens thoughtfully to his interlocutor, examining a small toy on the table. Ketel stands in front of the man at the table, answering a question about his name. The knight demands that the man provide documents confirming his identity, but he denies having them. Ketel thanks the woman with long blonde hair for her help and warning. Ketel carefully examines an elegant pendant with blue stones on a wooden table. The knight in armor reacts with surprise to the unexpected event. Ketel listens attentively to the story of the man in the fur coat at the table. A knight in armor discusses the influence and fame of certain people while studying documents. The knight carefully examines the document, doubting its authenticity and origin. Ketel reacts with surprise to the word he heard, trying to understand the meaning of the condition. The knight in armor reads the letter thoughtfully, not taking the threat seriously. Ketel listens thoughtfully as the knight explains the upcoming group task. Ketel agrees, but sets a condition after clearing the dungeon. Ketel and the masked man are having a serious conversation in a dark room. A character with white hair and gloves assesses the opponent's cunning in combat. The knight in armor asks with surprise whether his interlocutor is really a barbarian. Ketel confidently warms his hands, preparing for the upcoming test. The man in the helmet realizes with alarm that he has encountered an unusual barbarian. Ketel and the knight begin their discussion, focusing on the task at hand. A man with an unshaven face wearily ponders the law and the impending danger in the dungeon. Self-proclaimed Paladin Alexander Tyrannus sits with his arms folded, expressing arrogance. A man with long dark hair angrily accuses another of stealing money. Ketel encounters an aggressive man who violently insults him. A man with dark hair and armor mockingly discusses paladins. The man with the mustache looks at him with anger and determination as he makes an accusation. Ketel grips the hilt of his sword, asking irritably about the surname Tyrannus. A man with a sword in his hand reacts sharply to the unexpected appearance. He has long dark hair and armor and grins, offering to fight. An evil man with long hair strikes menacingly, piercing the enemy's armor. Ketel grips the hilt of his sword tightly, preparing for battle. Ketel tries to stop a fight between 2 men with guns. Priestess Kamosia Hayes ponders the upcoming defense of the dungeons. Ketel and a woman in a nun's robe discuss the danger that faces them. A girl in a nun's robe reacts sharply to an unexpected sound at the door. The knight announces the arrival of the last man, expressing hope for his sanity. Ketel steps carefully across the stone floor, listening warily to the sounds around him. Ketel and his companions enter the dark room, looking around warily. Ketel watches with a grin as the people around him react tensely to the noise. Ketel greets his interlocutor joyfully, demonstrating confidence and friendliness. Ketel listens attentively as they ask him to stay and talk among themselves. Ketel introduces himself warmly, smiling and opening his arms in a sign of friendship. A man with gray hair and purple eyes turns to another character in surprise. Alexandro Tyrannus introduces himself as a paladin, sitting confidently in a room with wooden windows. Ketel listens attentively to the other man's explanation of the paladin's unusualness. The nun admits with a smile to serving lies and deception. Ketel is surprised and thoughtfully reflects on the need to prove his identity to the priests. The nun nervously justifies herself, explaining why God is not respected. Ketel and his companions carefully examine the room, listening for strange sounds. A knight in armor announces the start of a movement, preparing for action. Ketel listens attentively to the bearded man, while the hooded woman is surprised. A mysterious hooded man announces the group's arrival. Ketel reacts with surprise to the sudden sound in the quiet forest. Ketel and his companions listen attentively when someone shouts about the dungeon. Ketel and his companions carefully discuss the threat looming over them. Ketel, with a determined expression on his face, orders the dungeon to be cleared and for him to return with the trophy. A man with dark hair and a scarf prepares to start a raid, asking about the plan. Ketel and his companions discuss the situation under the light shining through the trees. Ketel touches his chin thoughtfully, trying to find the words. A group of warriors prepare for battle, surrounded by flames and light. A man with a high ponytail explains the importance of supporting his sister in developing her abilities. Ketel listens attentively to his interlocutor against the backdrop of an autumn forest. Ketel and his companions prepare to emerge from their hiding place against the backdrop of sunset. Ketel and his companions walk warily through the dark and gloomy terrain. Ketel listens attentively to the conversation in the cave, illuminated by a dim light. A man with gray hair reacts sharply to an unexpected sound in the dark. Ketel listens warily to the warning about monsters, not noticing them. Ketel and his companions discover scattered bones and discuss the possible danger. Ketel realizes that the Captain of Fear had been checking their identities from the very beginning and wanted to get rid of the unnecessary ones. Ketel ponders skeletons thoughtfully as he listens to his interlocutor. Ketel watches the glowing skeleton as it continues to move without flesh. Ketel and his companions battle the reanimated skeleton in a tense battle. Ketel explains the attack strategy with concentration, taking into account the enemy's weak point. Ketel steps carefully, hearing the creaking of bones under his feet in the darkness. Ketel reacts with surprise to the sudden noise, trying to figure out the source. The skeleton appears unexpectedly, causing fear among the Ketel and his companions. The skeleton suddenly attacks, swinging its sword in the bright light. Ketel attacks swiftly, delivering a powerful blow that tears apart the space around him. Ketel reacts warily to the sudden sound, preparing for a possible threat. Ketel falls to the ground, surrounded by sparkling light effects. Ketel and his two companions were shocked by the sudden loud scream. Ketel confirms Kaizen's words with a smile, surrounded by radiance and energy. The man with the mask and cloak laughs, trying to justify what he said. Ketel fights a ghostly creature in a dark cave, defending himself from the attack. Ketel stands in the darkness, surrounded by three people who are surprised. Ketel steps carefully on the slippery surface, trying not to slip. Ketel smiles with confidence and is ready to continue on his way forward. Ketel watches as two men rush to run away in response to the scream. Ketel calmly advises them to take their time, causing another character to react with surprise. Two characters express despair and fear of death in a gloomy atmosphere. Ketil reacts with surprise to the unexpected sound in the darkness. Ketil steps on the skull, causing a tense atmosphere in the cave. Ketil watches a tense scene with four people in a dark cave. Ketil watches the skeleton and its skull fall after the sound of impact. A girl screams in panic. A masked man reacts with caution. Another man warns of danger. Three characters react with caution to an unexpected request for help. Ketil is determined to test the suspicions, despite the doubts of his companions. Ketil, with a purple glow in his eyes, thanks the girl, accepting her consent. A man with gray hair watches a skeletal creature come to life with a sword. Three characters watch warily what is happening in a dark cave. Ketil studies something in front of him with interest and surprise. Ketil watches as the skeleton suddenly comes to life and threatens him. Ketil deflects a powerful blow from a glowing skeleton with his sword during an intense battle. Ketil prepares for a powerful magical strike with concentration, concentrating his energy. A skeleton with a sword in his hand prepares to attack in a dark cave. A loud bang breaks the silence, causing a sudden reaction. Ketil confidently repels the enemy's attack, holding a sword with a blue glow. Ketil turned around sharply, hearing an unexpected sound in the darkness. Ketil intercepts his opponent's blade, parrying the attack in a tense fight. Ketil smiles with a slight blush, his eyes shining with an unusual light. Ketil reacts sharply to the sudden sound, preparing to attack. Ketil lies there, stunned by the sudden light and sounds around him. A skeleton in tattered clothes looks around in confusion, surrounded by question marks. The skeleton's glowing eyes suddenly flashed, expressing rage and threat. The sword struck the ground with force, causing a bright flash of energy. A skeleton with a staff attacks furiously, cutting through the space around itself. Ketil reacts with a smile and surprise to his interlocutor's unexpected confession. A skeleton in a cloak suddenly attacks, surrounded by a mystical blue light. Ketil grips the skeletal hand tightly, emitting a purple glow. Ketil fights back with fury from a skeleton's attack in a dark cave. Bony legs move quickly across the rocky surface, creating noise. A skeleton in a cloak rushes forward, radiating ominous energy. Ketil stands calmly as the skeleton swiftly attacks him with a sword. Ketil smiles and displays confidence as he assesses his opponent's intelligence. A woman in a robe is coughing, surrounded by a gloomy atmosphere. Ketil and his companion react tensely to a sudden noise in the darkness. Ketil squeezes his opponent's neck, surrounded by dark energy, showing his strength. Ketil strikes quickly with cold determination, putting his opponent on guard. The skull suddenly falls to the ground, causing an alarming sound in the darkness. Ketil reacts to the sudden noise with a tense look and violet eyes. Ketil lifts his leg, crushing his skull on the cold floor. Ketil reacts to the unexpected event with irony, calling it funny. Ketil apologizes for waiting while another character asks him to take his time. Ketil stands on the snowy ground, reacting to the sudden noise. Ketil, with a grin, suggests continuing on their way, ignoring his companion's anxiety. The three characters react to the order in panic, expressing great agitation. Ketil stands on the rocky ground, preparing for the unexpected. Ketil and his companions carefully examine the mysterious place in the cave. Ketil and his companions stand at the top of the stairs, preparing to climb to the second floor. Ketil listens attentively to the bearded man, while the nun watches them. A man with long dark hair and gloves reacts with surprise to the sudden sound. Ketil stands thoughtfully in the dark dungeon, contemplating the need for rest. Ketil looks up thoughtfully, reacting to a sudden cry nearby. Ketil watches the group sitting in the dark cave carefully. The nun and the knight react with caution to the unexpected event. Ketil smiles as he discusses the pursuit of knowledge and expresses gratitude. The purple-haired girl is surprised and wary of the sudden question. Ketil listens thoughtfully to the conversations of passers-by, hiding among the bushes. The nun explains that monsters usually don't come out of the dungeon, but there are exceptions. Ketil thoughtfully raises his hand to his face, reacting to the sudden sound. Ketil watches over a gloomy dungeon where mysterious caves and towers appear. Ketil looks thoughtfully at the ruined tower against the bloody sky. Ketil ponders thoughtfully about the reason for the appearance of something in this place. A woman in a nun's robe explains the dangers and protection of the dungeon. Ketil reacts to the unexpected address with a slight smile. Ketil discusses with other characters the appearance of enemies outside the territory. Ketil excitedly discusses the reward for successfully completing the dungeons. A woman in a nun's robe contemplates the reward for defeating a boss. Ketil explains to the girl that the situation is reminiscent of the events from the game. Ketil listens attentively to his interlocutor. While in a dark cave, the little hooded girl reacts with surprise to the question about the creator of the dungeons. A young nun discusses the origin of something unknown with surprise and doubt. Ketil reflects on the oddities and need to explore new phenomena around large cities. Snakes wrap around an apple, symbolizing the appearance of temptation and treasures near settlements. Ketil ponders thoughtfully the unusualness of what is happening, considering it too reasonable for nature. The young nun is surprised to realize that her interlocutor was right. The nun ponders thoughtfully, realizing that the situation seems destructive and precarious. A man with dark hair contemplates thoughtfully about the natural order and truth of the world. Ketil watches thoughtfully as the armored man stands among the trees. Ketil, with a tense gaze, notices something unexpected and interesting. Ketil greets his comrades with a confident smile. Ketil and his companions react with caution to sudden noise in a dark room. Ketil prepares to continue on his journey with confidence, urging others to move on. Ketil and his companions listen warily to the sounds in the dark cave. Ketil and his companions move cautiously through the gloomy cave, looking around warily. Ketil reacts with surprise to a sudden sound or event around him. Ketil notices a mysterious chest that suddenly appears and is surprised. Ketil and his companions discover a treasure chest, a reward for completing the labyrinth. Ketil carefully examines the contents of the chest, trying to understand its meaning. A man with gray hair and bangs between his eyes expresses bewilderment and confusion. He, with gray hair and Ketil eyes, laughs, confessing his role as a robber at the treasure chest. Ketil speaks confidently about the role of the robber and the chests, demonstrating determination. A man with dark hair and a tense expression realizes there is a problem. Ketil listens thoughtfully as another character reflects on the impossibility of finding himself in such a situation. Ketil despairs at his inability to pick locks, feeling like a failure. A man with long hair panics and tries to hide the truth. Ketil looks at his interlocutor with hope, trying not to disappoint him. Ketil, with a cold gaze, realizes the futility of his interlocutor and his inability to admit that he is a thief. A man with a tail reacts in panic to a sudden noise and flashing around him. He, with his gray hair, laughs, reacting to the shout behind him. Ketil reacts warily to the sudden noise, feeling someone's gaze behind him. Ketil recalls his skills as he watches a group of armed men in the dark. Ketil stands tense, surrounded by ominous purple light and sounds. Ketil stands in the fire, determined to risk his life for the sake of the goal. Ketil reacts with caution to the sudden sound in the tense atmosphere. Ketil reacts with caution to the sudden noise near him. The gray-haired man Ketil is surprised to notice the unexpected discovery. The young woman happily tells the Ketil about thieves who can open treasures. A man with gray hair reflects thoughtfully on the changes in his life and hope for the best. Ketil discusses with his companions the value and luxury of the discovered treasure. Ketil reacts with a slight smile to the sudden sound next to him. A man with gray hair and bangs between his eyes looks tense and asks to deal with the reward. A gloved hand drops a silver cup onto a golden surface. A man with long dark hair enjoys a drink in a mysterious atmosphere. He, with gray hair, screams in panic, reacting with fear to the sudden noise. Ketil tries to help with concern, while the other man panics and denies his guilt. Ketil and two other characters react with surprise to the unexpected event. Ketil steps carefully along the rocky surface, listening to the sounds around him. Ketil and his companions listen warily to strange sounds in the dark cave. Ketil and his companions are surprised to discover a huge skeleton in a dark cave. Ketil examines 4 skeletons and plans to deal with 3 of them. 3 characters react with alarm to a sudden sound in a dark room. Ketil, with violet eyes, firmly orders that the last one be left alive. A man with a black mask and a blue scarf assesses someone as truly frightening. The 2 characters listen attentively and agree to the plan of action. Ketil steps carefully on the slippery surface, listening to the sounds around him. The skeleton's glowing eyes suddenly light up in the darkness beneath the rubble. Ketil notices with alarm that the sight of the assembled skeletons gives him goosebumps. Ketil and his companions stand before the skeletons, preparing for battle in the dark cave. Several glowing skeletons suddenly appear, making ominous sounds. Ketil and the other characters are focused on the beginning of an important ritual. Ketil quickly fights back against the advancing skeletons, preparing for battle. Ketil quickly delivers a powerful blow to the skeleton in the dark cave. The skeletons suddenly come to life and make frightening sounds, causing shock to those present. Ketil calmly holds the skeletons back, warning them not to interfere with the rare spectacle. Ketil deflects a powerful blow from the skeleton, defending himself with his shield. A man with a mustache tensely deflects the bright blows of a sword with his shield. A powerful blow tears through the darkness, creating a sudden explosion of light and energy. Ketil quickly attacks the skeleton surrounded by a mystical blue light. Ketil attacks swiftly, releasing a powerful energy blast in the darkness. The bright-eyed girl suddenly notices a shadow that causes alarm. A bearded man furiously attacks the enemy, swinging his sword in a fiery gust. Ketil falls to the ground, surrounded by bright light and destruction. Ketil watches as the skeleton suddenly falls to the ground. The skeleton comes to life. Its bones begin to glow and tremble in the darkness. A skeleton with glowing blue eyes radiates ominous energy and screams. The sudden bright light and sound effect create a tense atmosphere. Ketil smiles as he admires the well-coordinated work of his team in the cave. Ketil observes the unusual event, assessing it as a rare sight. Ketil watches what is happening with a slight smile, hiding his true intentions. Ketil breaks through the barrier with a powerful blow, surrounded by energy. Ketil, naked and tense, prepares for a surprise attack in the darkness. Ketil watches the girl's reaction with tension, feeling threatened. A dark scene with a close-up of the skull's glowing eyes creates a tense atmosphere. A skeleton with a staff expresses confusion in a dark cave, surrounded by glowing particles. Ketil attacks the enemy with fury, surrounded by a fiery aura and screams. Red light lines rapidly cross the dark background, creating a tense atmosphere. A glowing skull lies on the ground, emitting a mysterious glow. Ketil stands up abruptly, hearing a loud sound outside the door. 3 men breathe heavily after an intense battle in a dark cave. Ketil and his companions discuss the powerful aliens from the snowy desert in the rain. The skeletons from the 3rd level of the dungeon have increased in number, but the Ketil deals with them easily. Ketil rushes forward rapidly, overcoming obstacles on the way. The nun looks anxiously at the dark-haired man sitting in front of her. A man with gray hair and bangs watches the muscular stranger closely. Ketil watches the knight descend into the deepest part of the dungeon. Ketil and his companions stand before the gloomy throne, feeling anxious and afraid. Ketil carefully studies the skeleton, noting its unusual strength and differences. Ketil watches the girl, surrounded by an ominous aura and ready to fight. Ketil discusses the need for confirmation from the territory and the possible consequences of the decision. Ketil reacts with a slight smile to the sudden sound nearby. Ketil looks up confidently, surrounded by wary companions. A mysterious warrior stands in armor with shining pink crystals. The dark knight in heavy armor is surrounded by mystical purple light and energy. A warrior in dark armor stands menacingly before a man in fur clothing. Ketil, with violet eyes, ponders thoughtfully about the skeleton maintaining its shape. A warrior in black armor with a skull on his helmet prepares to attack with a sword. The pink-haired girl jumps sharply at the unexpected sound. Ketil and his allies fend off the powerful attack, trying to protect themselves from the explosion. Ketil delivers a powerful blow, causing a bright flash and destruction around. A woman with red hair screams in panic, surrounded by fire and rocks. The glass breaks with a loud sound, creating the sensation of a sudden impact. Ketil deflects a powerful blow, protecting the girl from a flashy attack. A group of warriors react to a sudden noise in a dark cave, preparing for danger. Ketil reacts with surprise to the sudden sound in the dark room. A man with a mustache and beard in armor is shocked by the force of the blow and breathes heavily. A warrior in heavy armor with a sword feels the enemy's strength, causing fear in those watching. The robot's eyes flash a bright purple light, foreshadowing danger. Ketil attacks swiftly, surrounded by bright purple energy and lightning. Ketil looks forward with concentration, surrounded by radiance and energy. Ketil looks forward with surprise and caution, feeling the tension. Ketil delivers a powerful blow that breaks through the enemy's defense, surrounded by a purple aura. The armored skeleton takes a powerful blow, flying into pieces. 3 characters react in shock to a sudden loud sound in a dark forest. Ketil claps his hands confidently, preparing for the next challenge. Ketil reacts with caution to the sudden appearance of a stranger in the dark forest. Ketil suddenly became alert when he heard an unexpected sound next to him. A man with gray hair and Ketil eyes reacts in surprise to the sudden sound. A shining chest with golden ornaments attracts attention in an empty room. Ketil is surprised by the complexity of the lock and doubts his ability to open it. Ketil watches the decisive battle with a powerful enemy with a cold gaze. A man with gray hair, Ketil, reacts sharply to a sudden loud sound. Ketil and his companions watch as the man smashes the box, causing a cloud of dust and noise. 2 characters react in shock to a sudden loud sound. Ketil confidently explains how to get the reward in an unusual way. Ketil is surprised and hears quick footsteps after the unexpected sound of the chest breaking. Ketil looks thoughtfully at the flying figure, trying to understand its intentions. Ketil and his companions observe a bright flash of light that catches their attention. Ketil reacts warily to a sudden noise in the forest, trying to figure out the source. Ketil and his companions are confronted by a powerful explosion, causing chaos all around. A man with dark hair explains the peculiarities of passing through the dungeon. Ketil is surprised to learn of the existence of a rare secret room. Ketil shows interest in the conversation he overheard with a slight smile. A man with gray hair, Ketil, watches a surprised young man in a scarf. The hero is surprised by the rapid development of events, hearing a sudden sound. A knight in armor with a red cloak expresses surprise while leaning on the table. A deserted fortress wall under a clear blue sky with a slight noise. The hooded man asks anxiously about the impressions of the dungeon. Ketil confidently gives a thumbs up, causing surprise among those around him. Ketil and his companions prepare to enter the room under the guidance of the knight. The nun calmly reports that there didn't seem to be any serious problems. The armored knight thoughtfully discusses the possibility of leaving the barbarian in the domain. Ketil watches the girl, who is worried and pondering the lurking danger. The dark-haired man smirks, judging someone as non-problematic. A knight in a helmet discusses the strength of the barbarians and their impact on the team. Ketil confidently talks about the merits of Kazan, Alessandro, and Hayes in the battle. The soldier is surprised by the unusual friendliness of the strangers in the dungeon. Ketil reluctantly agrees to let the guests in, exercising caution. A group of warriors discuss the terms of the permit and warn of possible problems. Ketil receives a dungeon bounty bag, warning of frequent confiscations. Ketil holds the bag with a smile, expressing his reluctance to do anything this time. Ketil, smiling, offers to divide the spoils fairly, holding the bag over his shoulder. The 3 characters wave their hands nervously, trying to calm the situation. Ketil convinces his companions that they are one team and must fairly share the reward. Ketil cheerfully suggests celebrating and finding a pub nearby. 3 adults with serious faces look at the cheerful company, remembering the request to let them go. Ketil and his companions walk towards the glowing portal, discussing the skeleton knight's power. Ketil observes the mysterious creature with the sword, discussing its unusualness. Ketil steps carefully on the dry ground, listening to the sounds around him. A private soldier is ordered to remain at his post while the commander goes to the Lord. At night, candles burn in the castle, creating a mysterious atmosphere before dawn. A man with black hair invites you into a luxurious room. Ketil stands by the door, watching the man sitting at the table in the luxurious room. A bearded man in luxurious clothes carefully studies documents in the hall. The knight in armor reports the appearance of a barbarian in the house and mentions the captain of the guard. In a luxurious room, they are discussing who gave permission for something important. The knight explains that his solution will not cause any serious problems. A majestic man with a beard in a luxurious hall asks a question while sitting on a throne. A warrior in a helmet worriedly discusses possible problems in the library. A grown man with a beard and a serious expression asks an important question. A man in red stands, talking about the power of a skeleton knight's strike in a luxurious hall. Ketil is horrified to see the appearance of a powerful skeleton knight in the dark forest. A man with a beard and 3 shadows discusses an unknown creature in the dark. An armored warrior discusses the possibility and strength of an invisible enemy. The knight in armor looks around with concern, sensing the tension around him. Ketil listens thoughtfully to the order to summon someone in the hall with the knight. A man with a beard expresses fear and a desire to see someone in person. He, dressed in a red suit, addresses the knight standing in armor with determination. The armored knight suddenly becomes alarmed and reacts with caution to the noise. An adult man with a beard thoughtfully asks his interlocutor about his thoughts. The character grips the hilt of his sword, contemplating the strength and barbarity of his enemy. Ketil stands in the shadows, watching the confident knight in armor. A man with a beard listens attentively to what is happening in the room. A majestic man with a beard decisively orders the barbarian to be summoned for a private conversation. Appetizing dishes and mugs of foamy drinks lie on the table, creating a festive atmosphere. Ketil holds back the pain, gritting his teeth after the bite. Ketil and 3 companions discuss plans at a tavern table. 3 characters react in shock and tension to a sudden loud sound. A man accidentally knocks over a barrel of liquid, causing noise and splashes. Ketil enjoys the atmosphere and treats everyone at the table. The little nun laughs and the man with the eye patch looks embarrassed. A man with gray hair and bangs listens attentively to another's confession of being a holy knight. He, with short blonde hair, asks the Ketil about his divine power, who lies down and responds to the question. Inside a wooden house, 2 men awkwardly try to start a conversation. Ketil talks with a smile to a girl sitting with her back to him in a cozy room. A woman with long dark hair and a star mark on her forehead casts a spell. Ketil listens attentively as someone timidly asks him a question about strength. 2 men react with surprise to a sudden noise in the room. Ketil eats in surprise, not noticing what is happening around him. Ketil listens thoughtfully to the conversation about the power of the skeleton knight and the secrets of the Rin. Ketil prepares for battle with concentration, discussing the need for high rank. Ketil listens to the explanations of a woman in a nun's habit while sitting at a table. A man in an apron trembles nervously as he announces the establishment is closing. Ketil apologizes and says that it's time for them to leave too. The group discusses their plans as the doorbell rings. 2 men scream in panic, reacting to the sudden noise and fear. Ketil says goodbye with a slight smile, feeling the sadness and inevitability of separation. The dark-haired girl in the crown decisively declares that she will stop meeting with the 3 people listening to her. Ketil lies relaxed, enjoying the moment after a busy day. A man with gray eyes and a fringe between his eyebrows watches a frightened visitor. Ketil is resting on the bed, enjoying the peace and light in the room. Ketil reflects on the need for time to recover and prepares for new challenges. Ketil extends his hand forward, dreaming of adventure and the sacred lands of the elves. Ketil thoughtfully recalls the Tower of Magic and the royal capital. Sunlight filters through the wooden lattice, illuminating the room. Ketil wakes up in shock from loud knocks and tries to figure out the source of the noise. Ketil wakes up and waves away the noise, irritated and sleepy. Ketil wakes up from the noise, and the knight apologizes for disturbing him. Ketil, wounded and bandaged, asks the guard in surprise about the incident. Ketil suppresses a cough, trying not to draw attention to himself. The knight in armor announces Laura's desire to meet Ketil in person. A bearded man ponders the lore and its domains while sitting in a luxurious hall. He has gray hair and a lightning bolt on his chest, smiling against a brightly colored backdrop. Ketil watches as the two leave the house, discussing a quick exit. Ketil recalls her first impressions of the new place with its bustling market and passers-by. Ketil listens calmly to the conversation, watching the other two characters. The warrior is concentrating on the need to expand his view in a limited time. Ketil stands, reporting the arrival of the barbarian to his lord. A man in an elegant suit with a beard appears in the room and invites you in. Ketil and the woman enter a luxurious room with a red carpet and lights. The man extends his hand, expressing his readiness to meet the barbarian. A man with a beard and a stern look introduces himself as the lord of the Barcan territory. Two people shake hands as a sign of respect and formal recognition. Ketil introduced himself as a barbarian, extending his hand to the man in surprise. A man with glasses is surprised by the white-haired man's bow in a spacious room. Ketil reflects on the strength of the barbarians and the possible consequences of their actions. A man with a beard and wearing red clothes politely invites the Ketil to sit down. Ketil sits opposite a man in white clothes in a luxurious hall with a red carpet. Ketil carefully examines the luxurious interior of the Lord's castle in the light of the setting sun. Ketil is surprised when he thinks about castles in a fantasy world that look like medieval ones. Ketil is surprised to notice the knight guarding the Lord in the bright light. Ketil recalls his childhood and is surprised at how real his current life is. Ketil senses danger and prepares for a deadly attack. Ketil feels a thirst for blood and a determination to show strength in battle. An armored hand grips the hilt of a sword, making a threat. Ketil listens attentively to his interlocutor, trying to understand his motives. Ketil sits calmly at the table, preparing to answer his interlocutor's questions. Ketil speaks thoughtfully about the significance of his arrival from the coldest place in the world. A man with gray eyes, Ketil, listens attentively to a story about a world covered in snow. Ketil sits thoughtfully in a luxurious room, reflecting on the legendary barbarian. Ketil listens with tension to the words that make him doubt. Ketil, with his eyes closed, talks about the scary place, expressing doubt. A man with a beard and a serious expression asks a question about strength. Ketil stands in the darkness, pondering the enemy's strength and its danger. Ketil sits at a table in the hall, discussing his ignorance of the local power system. Ketil reacts warily to the sudden sound, looking around carefully. Ketil reacts sharply to the unexpected sound, looking around warily. A man with a beard offers to duel a knight in armor. Ketil is surprised to realize that a duel is coming. An important man with a beard sternly warns of the possible consequences. Ketil listens to the words with a smile, sitting at the table in the hall with the knight. A knight in armor stands against the backdrop of a tall tower in a mysterious blue light. Ketil ponders thoughtfully about the mysterious power of the knight from another world. Ketil watches what is happening with tension, feeling threatened and afraid. Ketil and the knight react with caution to the sudden noise in the meeting room. Ketil watches the arena where two men prepare to fight on the sand. A man with gray hair and a stern gaze assesses the situation under a clear sky. Ketil watches the scene unfold under the clear sky with a slight smile. A majestic man with a beard and a stern look sits on the throne. A man rings a large bell, attracting the attention of those around him. A knight in armor defiantly demonstrates his fencing skills. Ketil looks forward with a slight smile, lost in thought. The character with the intense gaze cannot believe in the calmness of the Ketil. Ketil prepares to show his strength with determination, feeling the tension of the moment. Ketil, with his eyes glowing brightly, displays stunning strength in battle. Ketil, naked and muscular, prepares for the decisive action in the desert. Ketil quickly reflects the bright green energy blast, defending himself from the attack. Ketil watches in surprise as his sword suddenly emits a bright light. Ketil tries to understand what is happening, feeling a strange glow and noise around him. Ketil notices that what he sees in front of him is not an illusion, but a real multiple reflection. Ketil displays powerful swordsmanship while surrounded by glowing swords. Ketil reacts with surprise to the sudden event, confirming his suspicions. The blond man confidently assesses his opponent's abilities, showing interest. Ketil breaks off the attack, firmly declaring that he has had enough. A dark-skinned man's clenched fist prepares to strike in an empty arena. Ketil focuses on deflecting the attack, swinging his sword and creating sparks. A man with pale skin and light hair reacts with confusion to an unexpected noise. Ketil knocks the enemy down with a powerful blow, swinging his sword. Ketil clutches the fabric of his clothes, expressing tension and determination. Ketil quickly fights off the attack, throwing his opponent back with force. A man with gray hair and bangs between his eyes falls to the ground, expressing pain and surprise. He, with a beard, reacts in shock to unexpected news or an event. A falling mechanical arm leaves marks on the floor of an empty room. Ketil smashes the ground with a powerful blow, causing cracks and dust. The knight falls after a powerful blow, and the man in red is surprised by the enemy's strength. Ketil looks ahead with a grin, waiting for further action. Ketil watches the man in the red cloak, who suddenly reacts to the noise. The man with gray eyes tensely confirms the accuracy of what he heard. Ketil watches the earth being destroyed by a powerful blow, amazed at the barbarian's strength. Ketil reflects on the barbarian's power to upset the balance of the world. Ketil stands before the glowing dragon, contemplating an important mission. Ketil reacts sharply to the sudden sound, peering warily at the source. An elderly man looks at the Ketil with a serious expression as it reacts to the sudden noise. A bearded man listens warily to a strange sound nearby. He, with gray eyes and a fringe between his eyebrows, expresses disgust at the interests of his interlocutor. Ketil stands with clenched fists next to the man in red sitting at the table. Swordmaster Kane seriously inquires about a matter that might interest Katala. The man in red gently places his hand on the table, creating a quiet sound. The man in red bows, expressing the honor of welcoming the guest into the hall. An elderly man with gray hair greets Lord Kane. A bearded man looks down thoughtfully, surrounded by light and leaves. Ketil lies on the bed, trying to sleep in the silence of the night. Ketil is lying down when a man with a beard suddenly asks how he is feeling. A man in black clothes lies down and apologizes, promising to get better in a couple of days. Ketil calmly tells the man in red that there is no need to apologize to him. The old man is alarmed when a sudden noise interrupts the peace of the room. Ketil notices that the hero has no scratches despite his damaged armor. Ketil assesses the condition of the body, surprised that it is intact despite the torn clothes. The old man explains to the young man that he can precisely control his strength. An elderly man with white eyebrows reflects on the superiority of the knight and mercy. Ketil and the other man react sharply to a sudden sound or flash. A man with a beard in a red suit speaks, addressing the Ketil. An elderly man with gray hair confidently declares his mastery of the sword. Three men discuss how one of them did not use aura despite the circumstances. The bearded man doubts the power of the creature that burst out of the white void. He thinks thoughtfully with wrinkles about the barbarian from the white wasteland. Ketil stands in a mystical light, contemplating the legendary figure rumored to be there. The old man calls upon dark magic, summoning a vicious beast with purple eyes. Two men discuss something with distrust in a cozy room with wooden walls. A woman in dark clothing is surrounded by purple energy, and a snake hisses in response. Ketil stands surrounded by smoke, thoughtfully assessing the situation. An elderly man with a mustache is intensely discussing the emperor, avoiding the topic. During a snowstorm, An armored warrior ponders strange requests. An elderly man with white hair assures another that there is no reason to worry. Ketil listens attentively to the conversation between two men in the room. An elderly man with gray hair is firmly considering the need to see something for himself. Against the backdrop of the bright sun, a majestic building with 2 towers and a coat of arms rises. Ketil speaks to the knight, expressing doubt about what he heard. A man in a suit hands over a bag containing a reward, expressing his determination not to be distracted. Ketil ponders the lack of clear plans and doubts the idea of an underground passage. Ketil listens to a knight discussing the search for a patron of high status. Ketil watches a conversation between a knight and a soldier discussing reputation and mercenaries. Ketil is shocked by the unexpected turn of events and remembers the mission for the monsters. Ketil thoughtfully wonders where he should go to become a mercenary. A knight in armor with a red plume recalls the guild's mission. Ketil confidently promises to come despite the difficulties, causing bewilderment in the night. Ketil and the others walk through the city at night, reflecting on the life of mercenaries. A man tries to escape from a huge monster with many eyes and sharp teeth. Ketil quickly fights back against his attacker, defending himself in a fierce fight. An enraged man with a beard challenges someone to a fight. An enraged man screams, expressing strong irritation and anger. 2 men discuss betting on the participants backing different fighters. Ketil and the other man react in fear to the loud scream, while the pink-haired waitress watches. Rosa, the registrar of the mercenary guild, wearily notices the oddities around her. A man with a mustache reminisces about a knight and a thief, and a nun listens. A girl with pink hair watches a depressed blonde in uniform. A girl in uniform sits thoughtfully at a table, and a man in a white coat rests. The door slowly opens, and a foot in fur boots appears from behind it. A woman with green eyes looks at something out of frame in surprise. The seller is shocked by the sudden appearance of a large stranger in fur clothing. Ketil smiles confidently, realizing that he has a guild task before him. The men are shocked by the unexpected noise and try to understand what happened. Ketil wakes up and looks around in surprise, trying to understand the situation. Ketil confidently declares his desire to become a mercenary. A young man with short blonde hair nervously tries to register as a mercenary. Ketil explains to her interlocutor that obtaining official status requires serious effort and readiness. Ketil types on a typewriter while answering a question about his age. Ketil completed his registration by receiving a confirmation badge on a red envelope. Ketil reacts warily to the sudden noise, trying to figure out the source. Ketil understands the situation with a slight smile, holding the object in his hands. Ketil asks about the tasks with enthusiasm, ready to start working immediately. Ketil receives a list of available quests from a girl in the tavern. Ketil looks at the contents of the book in surprise, not believing his eyes. Ketil studies the list of low-ranking tasks, waiting to begin work. The girl in uniform is nervous about the danger and possible help. The girl nervously explains to the man with white hair that she will start with simple tasks. The girl with green eyes reacts in surprise to the unexpected sound. A person carefully studies a list of answer options, pointing with a finger to one of the items. Ketil asks doubtfully if his interlocutor is confident in her work. Ketil thoughtfully wonders where one can collect herbs in this place. A man looks at a picture of a plant and explains its appearance. Ketil is determined to set out on his journey, holding a letter in his hand. Ketil looks at the note in surprise while the girl behind the bar watches him. Ketil carefully opens the door, listening to the sounds behind it. 2 waiters react in panic to an unexpected incident at the table. Ketil carefully studies the pattern of a flower against the backdrop of a sunny forest. A man with gray hair explains the healing properties of herbs for wounds. Ketil stands on the grass next to the fur cape, preparing for further action. A man in a straw hat confidently prepares for his first job under the sun. About an hour later, in the mercenary guild, the girl was shocked by the unexpected noise. Ketil asks in surprise if the collected herbs are enough for his purpose. The girl with green eyes reacts sharply to a sudden sound or scream. The heroes discuss the excellent condition of rare and valuable plants. Keatle thoughtfully covers his mouth with his hand, assuring himself of his accuracy. Keatle receives a modest reward, 1 silver coin, barely enough for food. A man in a cane hat picks flowers, reflecting on honest work. Keatle smiles with her eyes closed, feeling the light touch of the flower. A man in a fur vest talks affably to a surprised waitress. Keatle smiles, confidently speaking about a high harvest of sun and happiness. A character with short blonde hair and uniform expresses doubt about the mercenary's adequacy. Keatle looks at the list of tasks with several of them marked as completed. Keatle listens in surprise as someone talks about the third cleaning after the herb collection. A young man with short blonde hair asks for help shyly. Keatle peers cautiously around the corner, listening to the noise. A young man in a hood looks thoughtfully at the glowing particles in the air. Keatle confidently announces her arrival to clean the warehouse. A woman with a spear screams in rage at a man with gray hair and eyes. Keatle struggles through the ruins, remembering his previous mission. Keatle watches carefully through binoculars, smiling in response to what he sees. Keatle watches the hooded man closely as he studies something. And he doesn't do it half-heartedly. Keatle sweeps the street tiredly, thinking about his responsibility. Keatle is surprised and tries to understand why the man with the binoculars is reacting this way. Birds chirp in the leaves and a man's hand clenches into a fist under the light. The man stepped sharply on the floor, reacting to the unexpected sound. Keatle, surprised by the sudden noise, looks at the bag on the table. There is a bag on the table and part of a muscular body is visible next to it. Keatle is awarded a reward for successfully completing all 5 tasks on the first day. Keatle reacts sharply to the sudden noise, his eyes wide in surprise. A man with gray eyes receives a bag of silver coins from a smiling waitress. Keatle smiles and thanks, promising to come again tomorrow. The scene is filled with glowing particles against a blurred background. Keatle, with a slight smile, prepares to begin his second day in civilization. A little girl cries, and adults react to her cry with surprise. Keatle walks confidently down the street, enjoying the sunny day and the coolness. Keatle says the word thoughtfully, looking at the ancient library building. The doorbell rang unexpectedly in the silence of the room. The woman in glasses turned around sharply, hearing an unexpected sound nearby. Keatle suddenly appears in the darkness, startling the man reading the book. The library is quiet. The books are neatly stacked on the shelves and table. Keatle reads the book with interest, smiling and immersed in the plot. Keatle is reading a book intently in the library, while the librarian watches him silently. Keatle listens intently while the other man reacts nervously to the noise. Keatle reads a book thoughtfully in the library, surrounded by soft light. Keatle looks thoughtfully at the history book, reflecting on the unusualness of the Barbarian. A woman with long blue hair contemplates the impending war and the fall of the Empire. The Empire prepares for an offensive, demonstrating incredible power and determination. Keatle watches as the world around him seems to be consumed by darkness and chaos. Keatle stands indoors and ponders thoughtfully about the world state. Keatle is concentrating on what he really wanted to learn. Keatle looks at a book with an inscription about non-humans, deciding to learn more about them. Keatle studies the book with surprise, realizing the reality of fantastic creatures. Keatle reflects on a mysterious place full of magic and secrets. Keatle looks thoughtfully out the window, thinking about the mysterious place. Keatle reads the book thoughtfully, reflecting on the right he has received to visit the Elven Sanctuary. Keatle reads the book with surprise and disbelief, trying to understand the strange places. Dark demonic worlds are full of dangerous creatures and anomalies that threaten people. There is a silence in the forest that silently colors everything around. A dark abyss with fiery chains and a demonic figure surrounded by flames. In the deep sea where primates live, a sunken chest can be seen. An image of a deep black hole appears, surrounded by bright colors, symbolizing emptiness. Ketil and other figures with glowing eyes stand in the snowy wasteland. Ketil sits thoughtfully on a chair, reflecting on the size of the world and emptiness. Ketil collects the books, completing his search, while another man watches closely. Ketil thanks for the useful information, causing the woman in glasses to smile. Ketil looks out from behind the door, watching the bright garden. Ketil asks Rose if she has any tasks today. Ketil smiles as he receives a task form from another character. Ketil listens attentively to the hooded old man who warns him of possible danger. The night city is illuminated by the full moon and twinkling stars in the sky. Ketil confidently walks through the night city, leaving shadows behind him. Ketil looks forward to completing a large number of tasks today with confidence. Ketil reflects on the benefits of accumulating small tasks over time. Ketil walks down a deserted street, thinking about the approach of mercenaries. Ketil walks calmly down the street, whistling a melody, while someone stands silently nearby. Ketil reacts with surprise to the unexpected sound of footsteps in the night city. An elderly man in a hood stands menacingly in a dark corridor in front of the Ketil. Ketil cautiously asks what is needed from him, noticing someone in the night city. An elderly hooded man reflects on his inability to sense the presence of another. Ketil watches the old man's sudden movement and reaction with tension. Ketil, with a serious expression on his face, reflects on encounters with bandits even in secure areas. The hooded old man nervously makes excuses, afraid to reveal his swordsmanship. Ketil listens in surprise to the old man in the dark cloak against the backdrop of lightning. Ketil touches his face thoughtfully, reflecting on his achievements. An elderly man in a hood reacts in surprise to an unexpected sound. Ketil reflects on being mistaken for a bandit, viewing the situation as an opportunity. Ketil prepares for battle, deciding to test the enemy's strength and identity directly. Ketil rises abruptly in response to the noise, and the old man watches with alarm. Ketil turned sharply at the sudden sound, warily assessing the situation. The character panics when he realizes that someone important has suddenly disappeared. Ketil reacts sharply to the sudden cry, turning around warily. The hand is pulled forward sharply, creating the sensation of a powerful release of energy. Ketil stands on the edge, feeling the approach of danger and the fear of falling. Ketil reacts with caution to the sudden appearance of the mysterious green energy and the old man. Ketil reacts with interest to the unexpected sound in the darkness. Ketil watches the magical battle with confidence, assessing the enemy's speed. A man with gray hair and a beard looks worriedly at the lying man. Ketil watches the rapid movement with interest, amazed at the strength of the human body. An elderly man with a beard realizes that the situation has gone beyond a routine inspection. An old man with white hair and beard attacks swiftly, surrounded by green energy. Ketil reacts sharply to an unexpected loud sound in the dark. Ketil suddenly grabbed the old man's hand, his eyes glowing purple. An elderly man panics when he realizes he was unable to react to the sudden event. Ketil squeezes his hand, reacting to the sudden cry and the strange sensation. The old man experiences severe pain from an unknown powerful force, unable to cope with it. Ketil releases all his power with concentration, surrounded by green energy. Ketil reacts with caution to an unexpected sound in the darkness. Ketil is surprised to feel a strange glow coming from his hand. Ketil is surrounded by a green mystical light, feeling a powerful energy around him. An explosion of bright green energy suddenly illuminates the dark space. An elderly man with gray hair releases green energy, preparing to attack. Ketil studies the glowing green magical light on his palm with concentration. The old man peers tensely into the darkness, trying to detect danger. Ketil stands confidently, explaining that bandits have many tricks, but in response there is indignation. The man with the mustache ponders thoughtfully about the materialization of mana and the strange actions at the summit. Ketil listens in amazement to the story of some bandit's trick under the night sky. The elderly man remains tensely silent, sensing the anxiety in the air. Ketil watches the mysterious green energy blast, trying to understand its nature. The old man with the sword is surprised by the strength of the Keetle, who stands opposite him in the darkness. Keetle takes a decisive step, preparing to complete the work he started. The man carefully takes the object out of its sheath, listening to the sounds around him. The darkness and silence are interrupted by a sudden sound, causing surprise in the elderly man. Keetle and the old man are in an intense rivalry, trying to snatch the sword from each other's hands. Keetle restrains the old man, who reacts in horror to the sudden noise. The old man screams sharply, frightened by a sudden noise or movement. The old man with a weapon in his hands reacts tensely to an unexpected touch on his finger. Keetle reacts sharply to the sudden sound, looking around warily. A man with white hair and glowing eyes leans menacingly towards someone. An elderly man with white hair and a mustache feels his death approaching. Keetle gazes thoughtfully at the night sky, lost in thought. Keetle holds the lifeless man in surprise, reacting to the noise around him. The knight in armor with red hair expresses surprise and concern. Keetle looks in surprise at the old man, who is being lifted by his clothes. An elderly man panics as he tries to understand why Sword Master Cain is here. An armored knight screams in panic, reacting to the sudden noise. Keetle asks with a smile, confirming the terms of the mercenary's work. The warrior in armor is stunned and does not understand what is happening around him. The knight in armor tells the story of a man with incredible strength and the Sword Master Cain. An elderly man with a tired expression reflects on his humiliating situation. The character panics and tries to justify himself, fearing being accused of theft. Keetle discusses the criminal's possible accomplice with a serious expression. Keetle is standing on the floor. A sharp sound is heard, attracting attention. The armored knight greets Swordmaster Cain, calling him the only one in the kingdom. Keetle reacts with caution to the sudden noise, and the older man looks tense and worried. Keetle reacts with surprise to the conversation about the title of Swordmaster and Thief. Keetle explains the reason for the attack, which was related to his silver coins. The knight confirms that he is in the presence of a swordmaster, not a mage who has changed his appearance. Keetle listens intently to the conversation, trying to understand the meaning of what is being said. A man with gray hair, Keetle, confirms his status as a swordmaster to another character. Keetle listens thoughtfully to the knight and decides to report to the Laura first. The angry man in red stood up abruptly from his throne, reacting to the words. Keetle apologizes and promises to tell the whole story, looking serious. An elderly man with white hair reacts tensely to a sudden noise. Keetle and the old man sit tensely opposite each other at a table in a room with red curtains. The man in the red suit speaks with concern, and the Keetle listens thoughtfully. Keetle thoughtfully realizes that the barbarian is stronger than the swordmaster. Keetle watches two men discussing a dangerous and uncontrollable creature. Keetle refuses to participate in the conversation, complaining of a headache. Keetle steps carefully across the wooden floor, preparing for further action. Keetle and another man are sitting in a room with red furniture when suddenly a loud sound is heard. Keetle listens attentively to his interlocutor in a luxurious room with warm lighting. An elderly man drinks tea with an expression of annoyance, feeling humiliated. An older man introduces himself as Kale, a swordmaster, over a cup of tea. Keetle reacts with surprise when asked about the surname Swordmaster in a conversation with a stranger. Keetle listens attentively to the old man, discussing the swordmaster's technique. The elderly man with white hair expresses mild surprise and concern. The man's hand is surrounded by a green magical light, causing surprise. Keetle reacts sharply to the sudden noise, trying to understand what is happening. An elderly man with gray hair explains the manifestation of mysticism called aura. Keetle prepares for the coming battle with determination, feeling the power around him. Keetle looks with surprise and admiration at the man in fur clothing, who is eager to learn something new. An elderly man with white hair demonstrates mystical energy in his hand. Keetle thoughtfully tries to understand the connection between mysticism and Manu. An elderly man explains mysticism and the use of aura in magic and combat. A man smilingly discusses the possibility of learning a new technique of using magic and a sword. An elderly man reacts with surprise to another man's words about expanding his knowledge. Keatle asks with a grin to be taught, causing surprise in his interlocutor. The elderly man in the cloak is puzzled and tries to understand the situation. Keatle calmly explains that he doesn't know about mysticism and is simply swinging a sword without knowledge. The old man fights the attacker, demonstrating sudden strength and agility. An elderly man with long blonde hair confidently declares his mastery of the sword. Keatle, with a cold gaze, reproaches his opponent for his weakness and failure to use his sword. Keatle listens to his interlocutor, reflecting on the oddities of the title of sword master. Keatle listens to a man with gray hair who talks about victory with a sword. Keatle looks forward with hope, while the old man thoughtfully lowers his gaze. A dark man with a staff explains the true and terrible form of fencing. An elderly man explains the art of fencing and the mystical power of the sword. An elderly man with an eye patch summons magical energy to his sword. Keatle looks in surprise at the older man, who reacts nervously to his words. An elderly man with a tense expression on his face cannot believe what is happening. An old man with white hair demonstrates his fencing skills with a green sword. A powerful explosion tears through space, causing surprise in the observer. The wall was destroyed by a powerful explosion, and thick smoke and dust rose around it. Keatle explains the existence of many techniques for creating illusions using aura. An older man with a sword explains that his style gives him physical fitness. Keatle listens to an old man discussing a recently revealed mystical technique. Keatle reacts warily to the sudden noise, trying to figure out the source. Keatle stands opposite the man with the sword, preparing for a conversation or a confrontation. Keatle reflects on his life and achievements, surrounded by a mystical light. A man with gray hair reacts with surprise to the other character's quick actions. Keatle holds the heavy axe confidently, preparing for the upcoming battle. Keatle moved quickly across the carpet, reacting to the sudden noise. Keatle prepares to deliver a powerful blow with his battle axe in a tense fight. The man with gray hair attacks rapidly, creating a whirlwind of rapid strikes. Keatle reacts sharply to the unexpected movement and prepares to attack. Keatle stands on the red carpet, watching the devastating explosion ahead. A sudden, powerful explosion tears through space, causing chaos and destruction. An elderly man reacts sharply to a sudden noise, expressing shock and fear. Keatle clutches an axe, from which smoke rises against the red sky. A man with gray hair and eyes, a Keatle, confidently holds a heavy weapon and smiles. Keatle watches as the old man recalls the powerful and swift blow that he almost didn't believe. The old man explains to the man that fencing is created for real combat, not for show. Keatle listens attentively to his interlocutor, trying to understand the importance of what is said. An elderly man with gray hair reflects on his pride, surrounded by a haze. A hand grips the hilt of a sword against the backdrop of intense red light. Keatle focuses on deflecting powerful energy attacks, surrounded by green light. Keatle notices with surprise that someone's body has split into pieces. Keatle creates a bright green explosion with a powerful swing, destroying everything around him. Keatle and another man stand in a huge crater after a powerful explosion. A man with gray hair explains the essence of body division and aura control. An elderly man with white hair and a mustache looks at the Keatle with defiance. Keatle steps carefully over the cracks in the ground, listening to the sounds around him. Keatle stands on the ruined ground next to an elderly man in a cloak. Keatle raises his weapon sharply, preparing to attack the sudden threat. Keatle concentrates on creating a powerful energy vortex that destroys the earth around him. An elderly man reacts sharply to a sudden noise or shout nearby. Keatle creates a powerful whirlwind, destroying everything around him with its power. A vortex of bright purple energy spins rapidly, creating a powerful explosion of light. Keatle stands in the fire, thoughtfully asking the opinion of his interlocutor. An elderly man is terrified and trembling as he finds himself on the cracked ground. Ketil watches closely as the old man reacts with fear to the sound. Ketil watches the white-haired man, who is shocked by what happened. An elderly man cries, covering his face with his hands in despair. Ketil assesses the strength of the interlocutor's spirit, noticing its weakness. Ketil stands on the cracked ground, feeling the tension around him. An elderly man with gray eyebrows admires the fencing skill. Ketil stands talking to an older man who is kneeling and making excuses. An older man with gray hair acknowledges the authenticity of the style shown by someone. A man in a cloak attempts to use materialization magic, surrounded by green light. An older man with a determined expression proves the strength of his style against a backdrop of fire. Ketil reacts to the barbarian's crazy actions with a determined look. Ketil watches as the old man is amazed by the incredible speed and force of his opponent's movement. The man with gray hair suddenly flinches when he hears an unexpected sound. Ketil stands before the old man on the cracked ground, apologizing. An elderly man explains the importance of aura control in mastering techniques. An older man explains the need to awaken mysticism while two young men prepare for battle. Ketil is surprised to realize that divine power is something else. A dark, horned figure stands behind a praying nun against a backdrop of fire and flames. Ketil touches his chin thoughtfully, lost in thought. The mysterious energy glows brightly, symbolizing the hidden power within everyone. Ketil studies the 5 stages of mysticism with concentration, calling forth the green flame. An elderly man explains the main stage of awakening mystical sensations. Ketil discusses with another character that not everyone is capable of feeling something special. An elderly man with white hair announces the assignment of the 3rd rank. Ketil meditates, surrounded by luminous symbols, studying the ranks of mysticism. A woman with blue hair explains the classification of superhuman ranks. Ketil, with a thoughtful expression, realizes the meaning of what he saw earlier. An elderly man explains the convenience and vagueness of the classification system. Ketil stands on the cracked ground and listens attentively to the old man in the cloak. An elderly man with gray hair and a beard confidently explains the importance of a sense of mysticism.